Oh, there you are, YouTube. So today, as part of our Keanu Reeves marathon that we are currently in, my wife and I watched Johnny Mnemonic. And we watched it on Superbit. Do you remember Superbit? It was a type of DVD where I guess the information took up almost all of the DVD, like the film itself. So the picture is much clearer. It's like a step towards Blu-ray without being Blu-ray, like the highest quality DVD basically is what it is. But you know, they had like the silver border around the image. I don't think they ever had special features. This one does not have special features. And I think the reasoning for that is the movie takes up so much space on the disc that there's no room for special features. But anyway, this movie, I was trying to get it on Blu-ray for my wife for Mother's Day, but it's a hefty Blu-ray. Must be in limited supply or something because I could not find it on the cheap at all. And then I found a bunch of used like DVDs that were, you know, cheap, but I wanted to get a new one, and those were kind of expensive. And this was kind of expensive, but like as a new one. You could get used ones, but you know, you never know the quality. So this was still in its original packaging, and I found it at a great price. I don't know if the person knew what they had or what, but I was able to get it pretty cheap, which was great because when you're watching it, sure, it doesn't have any special features, which I think for a movie like this would be cool, but the picture quality is pretty strong. It's, you know, not Blu-ray, but it's not DVD. It's somewhere in between, and that's what you get with Superbit DVD. Do you remember these? Do you remember these at all? I don't think they were sold everywhere. I think maybe Best Buy had them, but I don't think you could go to like Walmart or Target and see those. I could be wrong, but I just remember them being a little bit more specialized, but I could be completely wrong on that. But anyway, Johnny Mnemonic is sort of weird for me because I was very aware of movies that were coming out in the 90s. But this one somehow, the previews must have skipped over my house because I was not aware of this movie, I think, until maybe I was like in high school, maybe early college, something like that. But in the mid-90s, I think it came out in 95, I was not aware of this movie. I feel like I'm blown out. There, how's that? I was not aware of this movie, and I just don't know why. Was it not shown on movie channels? I'm trying to recall, like, did Cinemax ever preview this movie? Did HBO ever say, you know, watch this movie? Because I don't have memories of it until learning about it later, you know, maybe 5, 6, 7 years later, something like that. So yeah, I don't know. It's a weird one to me. But I also learned that it was Canadian, so maybe, I don't know. Keanu Reeves just got off Speed, though. This was like Speed and then Johnny Mnemonic. So you would think it would be really big here, and maybe it was, and I just missed it. And you know, it flopped, but you know, the initial build-up for the movie, you think that would be something that I knew about. But yeah, it's a Canadian movie. One thing I want to note about it being a Canadian movie, at the very end, should I talk about this now? Maybe I should talk about it later. So anyway, this movie, it reminds you of so many things because its plot is very simple. It's basically like Keanu Reeves has something that was given to him. The mob wants it, and he has to get from point A to point B with it while being chased. And it's just, you know, very simple story like that, but told in the future. What future? So this came out in 95, but it takes place in 2021. This year. The future that is presented in that movie is supposed to be the future we are currently living in. Which is interesting because there are a lot of people wearing face masks in this movie. It's about the internet and like cybersecurity. Like, things are not very secure on the internet, so you can't just like take a satellite and shoot information. You know, you can't just pass information through the internet, you have to upload it into the brains of individuals, and then they have to get to the destination, you know, on foot or through car, plane, whatever. And so secretly in their head, they have a little jack here, just kind of like The Matrix. This movie also, you know, sort of reminds me of The Matrix. So Keanu Reeves has this hole in here, and then some information gets plugged into his head, and then he has to take it to this other place. And it's like, I think, what I read into it is they didn't trust that information to pass through the internet, so they have to give it, you know, to him so that he can pass the information. It's basically, you know, like a telegram, but digital, like a digital telegram inside a person's head, like downloaded into his head. But this information there was so much information that he actually had to knock out some of his childhood memories in order to download all of this information into his head. So he's missing a lot of his own personal childhood memories in order to make room for that. So yeah, anyway, the visuals of this movie are pretty fun because they're like shooting for Blade Runner, I think, and they get it in some places, but it feels more like Running Man. Like, this is 95, but it feels more like 80s Running Man. Sometimes it feels like Blade Runner. Like, you can tell they're shooting for that. Also sort of feels like, man, what's the other one? I said Running Man, but Total Recall, 1990. It feels very Total Recall also. Just the way the practical effects are done, maybe even a little RoboCop. So it's really cool in my eyes. But they also have some, you know, 3D animation technology in it. And it's very... Who's that guy that was always like... Does that make any sense what I just did there? I think he was from the 90s. It was like the dad neighbor from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids played this character. I don't even know what he's from. I don't think he had a show. Maybe he had a show where he was in commercials and stuff. I don't know. I can't remember his name right now. But, you know, sort of has that look to it. Lawnmower Man sort of has that look to it, if I remember the Lawnmower Man correctly. I mean, I haven't watched that since I was a kid. But anyway, it had some interesting and fun 3D animation in the movie, which was supposed to be like the physical space that is the internet. And there was a way for like Keanu to sort of jack in to the internet. So a lot of ties to the Matrix in this film, which is kind of interesting. I wonder if he was ever asked, like, were you reluctant to do the Matrix because of all the similarities Johnny Mnemonic had to, you know, the script? So, you know, were you like, no, this is too similar to something I've done or not? I need to look for interviews like that because I think that would be interesting. But yeah, I think Tank Girl even sort of reminds me of that, not just because Ice-T is in this, but so yeah, sort of remind me of Tank Girl. Just a lot of like B sci-fi movies from the 80s and 90s that were maybe like over, I don't know, they're really shooting for the stars. Like, what is that word when you are just trying to make something grand but can't quite do it? I'm at a loss for words for what that is, but not overwhelmed, but they were, I don't know, shooting for the stars, but couldn't quite based on their budget. But yeah, I really liked the dressing of the movie. You know, the movie is a basic salad when it comes to plot, but it has this nice sci-fi cyberpunk dressing around it that makes you like it a little bit more than you know the generic plot would allow you to do, essentially. So I don't know, I liked it, even though I think it's pretty bad. A lot of bad acting. I think this is, you know, some of Keanu Reeves' worst work as an actor. From what I looked up though, or my wife looked this up and told me about it, the movie was supposed to be a little bit more artsy and interesting, but it was re-edited and maybe some reshoots happened to make it a little bit more mainstream, so maybe it could have been a little bit more interesting. Here's another funny thing. If you look at that, it says Keanu Reeves and Dolph Lundgren, right? Dolph was probably maybe the 5th or 6th main character in the movie. I mean, I shouldn't say main character, like 5th or 6th supporting character. Like if you're going through who had the most screen time, who had the most importance, he is very low on the list. So he's just a name on here. You know, he has, it's funny that he is listed up there next to Keanu, and it shows just they were banking on that star power. Oh yeah, but, so remember when I said Keanu Reeves, his character, had to take out some of his childhood memories, but at the end something happens to him where he's able to get those back. And I'm watching, so we are getting flashes of his childhood memories at the end of the movie. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, wait a second, that's the X Mansion. That's Professor Charles Xavier's house. I know that place. I know it better than anything. So I was telling my wife that, and she's like, what? How do you know that? That's just a hallway. And I was like, I know that hallway so well. The X-Men, the 2000 X-Men is one of my favorite movies ever. So she looked it up, and it was that X-Men place in Toronto, that same mansion. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, supposedly this is a Canadian movie. I know Keanu Reeves is Canadian. I know Dolph is not, but I don't know. I sometimes I wonder if that's maybe the reason I didn't know about it. Like maybe it wasn't marketed here very well in the U.S., or maybe they just knew they had a bad movie or something, because it is a bad movie, but it's kind of cool at the same time. I wish it was a bigger cult classic, because I feel like it probably is, but I think it should be like a really big one, especially this year, 2021. Make this a cult classic before the year's over. I had more I want to say, and I still want to. I just got to think of it really quick. Sorry, have some indigestion or something happening to me. This is a funny thing about this. So the slip cover is like open on both sides, like that. That's not normal. So if you set this up in your movie collection, it can still get sun faded on the edges, which I don't like. But what are you going to do? More on this film. This is going to be a one take, so you're just going to have to wait for me to regain the topic I wanted to discuss with this movie. It's Canadian. Was that what I wanted to talk about? Keanu Reeves. He gives a bad performance in it. It's similar to all these other types of movies. And there was another thing Johnny. How many times is Keanu Reeves going to be named John, Johnny, or Jack, Jonathan in a movie, right? So many times. You know, I'm so sad because I've lost my train of thought. I had something that I felt was very, very important to this discussion that I wanted to add. Oh, this wasn't it, but I'm going to talk about it. Maybe this part reminded me of Tank Girl or something, I don't know, but there was this dolphin in the movie that was in this tiny, tiny, tiny little aquarium, and like it was clearly just meant for fish, and it had all this cyberpunk stuff on it, and I don't know, that reminded me sort of like of the kangaroos in Tank Girl, but I just remembered what I was going to say. The director of this movie, prior to this, he had only directed like REM music videos. Are they a Canadian band? I don't know. And one episode of Tales from the Crypt, and then he made this movie and never made anything again. So while I was watching this movie, I thought Keanu was so bad in it, and I was thinking, how did he recover? How did he recover from this? Because you think this would tank a career, and it did the director. Maybe the director was just like, nah, directing's not for me, or it tanked his career. Same thing with the writer, who I think is an important cyberpunk writer. I'm not that into, the literature, but he didn't do much in film anyway beyond this, but maybe he's sticking to writing. But the director, yeah, it was this and then nothing else. And prior to this, it was one episode of Tales from the Crypt and some music videos. So I thought that was interesting because maybe it killed their careers, or at least the directors. I don't know what the writer's doing. But Keanu somehow survived this movie and kept going and eventually became Neo. So I don't know, like he became one of our greatest A-listers, I guess. You know, you could say at that time anyway. So I don't know. I'm very happy that I saw this. I can definitely see myself watching it again. I hope it becomes a cult classic. I think it's kind of bad, but also kind of good. I just really love the dressing, the environment, the sets. All of that is great. The makeup, you know, trying to do some of that Blade Runner style makeup was also happening. You know, the Daryl Hannah makeup. But yeah, I don't know. Kind of cool. This thing went much longer than I expected. I hope you made it to the end. I appreciate it if you did. Cheers to you. Much appreciated. A lot of gratitude to you to watch this entire video. Thank you so much. So yeah, on that note, perhaps I'll see you tomorrow for more Pure Hangout.